pressed it.
It takes a minute.
It's your professionalism that I respect.
Good morning.
Good morning, fam. How's everybody on this bright and shiny
I'm
Thursday?
doing fabulous. Stephanie, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here today.
Totally believable, Steph.
I am. I look forward to seeing you guys every week. I made cookies last night.
What type of cookies did you make yet?
They were like chocolate chip cookies, like pretty basic. But I had to take one of them to the doctor because he was feeling really crummy.
What do you call what's faster than an escalator?
I don't know, Anthony. What's faster than an escalator?
Thank you, Chris, for asking. It's an esca-sooner.
That is so terrible.
It's really bad. Yes. It's
Are we
really
at the
bad.
bottom of the dad joke?
You
barrel?
guys laughed.
That one might be the greatest dad joke of all time. The ethics. Today, Stephanie and Anthony, we're talking about intellectual property and business ideas. I wanted to share a business idea that I have. I think we should put watches in belts. It may be a waste of time, though.
Wasted. Oh, that was good. That one's good.
Was it though?
It was good.
Yes, it was amazing.
It was dead on.
All right. That's it for this week's show. We'll see you
Thanks
all
for
next
coming.
week. Thanks for hanging out. Stay with us. Anthony, Stephanie, what if your first investor pitch permanently destroyed your right to protect the idea? Kurt Jones invented Dippin' Dots and sold them for a year at fairs before filing his patent. That gap triggered on-sale bar. His patent was later ruled unenforceable when he tried to stop competitors for Dippin' Dots, which is one of the greatest inventions of all time. I think we can all agree. Dippin' Dots are fantastic. Today on How to Founder, we're going to be talking about protecting your ideas, what to file, what to keep secret, and why your first pitch might already be costing you your rights you didn't know you had. I'm your host, Chris Franks. With me, Anthony Franco, Stephanie Hayes. It is just the three of us as promised. We decided, actually, no more guests said that they would come on the show. I mean, words out in the podcasting community.
It was a mutual decision.
It was a mutual decision. All right, so let's just try to get our heads wrapped around this. Stephanie, we were talking backstage. IP, we come out of the software world. It's a little bit fuzzy. Anthony, you've had some dealings with patents. I am deep in the patent landscape, intellectual property landscape right now. Let's just define this thing. When we're talking about intellectual property, what is it? Why do we need to understand it as founders?
What is intellectual? It's intellectual property. So let's talk about it from historical perspective. Why does it even exist? It exists so that people will come to our country with their ideas because the country will protect innovators and their ideas and their execution around those ideas. The patent law exists something like this. You give us your idea, you patent it, and we'll protect that idea for 20 years, but you tell us how to do it. So after 20 years, it's now everybody's. And there's ways around it, but that's what patent law is. Trademark is a little bit different. Copyright is a little bit different, but we're talking about specifically IP protection. So that's the definition.
I think it was actually somewhat coherent and understandable, Stephanie. I'm a little bit surprised coming out of
There's a first time for everything. Yeah.
Hey,
I
Yeah,
think one
it
of,
was-
one of the interesting questions for me is that comes up a lot with founders is when do I make the decision to patent or trademark? Because it is a big process and it takes a lot of effort. And like what do I decide to patent and what do I decide to trademark? And I think that's always the question, right?
and I will tell you that there are people out there that will not do or do a disservice to founders by suggesting they need to go out and try to patent everything and they need to start filing and spending all of their hard-earned cash or capital on intellectual property, which is I think is a terrible idea. So before I get into the next series of questions, I think that one of the ideas that really helped me understand this, I wanted to ask you if it helped you guys, is this idea when it's called intellectual property, because we treat it like property within businesses. We treat it as an asset within businesses. It can go on the balance sheet. It can be something that actually creates value in your business. Is that how you guys think about it? Because that's how I tend to frame it in my mind.
I think this is a really interesting question because, first of all, a lot of founders will ask investors to sign an NDA before they pitch the deal, which investors will not sign an NDA. But what they're really trying to do is protect their IP. There's a way around that we can talk about, a low cost way around that we can talk about. But more interestingly is your opening story, Chris, about Dippin' Dots. By the way, well researched story.
Very
done.
well researched. Yes. Well,
But did not having a patent hurt Dipping Dots? What was the more valuable IP? The idea, the execution, or the brand?
or trade secret. How do you actually make those delicious little dots of ice cream? That just
Or a trade secret? That's another great question that we need to talk about. Like, do you patent it or do you treat it as a trade secret?
Let's start with the idea of a non-disclosure, because it is something that every founder needs to know and understand, particularly if you're going in and starting to try to raise money. You walk in, somebody says, hey, I might be interested in investing with you, or more likely just taking a pity meeting when you're first pitching your idea. And you go, oh, I don't want them to go take my idea and turn around and tell somebody else of this brilliant, genius startup idea that I have. So I'm going to ask them, I'm going to download off Claude a non-disclosure agreement and ask them to sign something that says they will not disclose my idea. That is profoundly stupid on so many fronts. Anthony, tell us why.
Well, a lot of reasons. One, an investor will never sign an NDA. They see so many ideas and they just don't do it. They don't sign NDAs. And if an investor says they will sign an NDA, they're not a real investor. Like, you're wasting your time. Secondly, it's not just about protecting the idea, which a patent does, but you also have to contemplate, one, is it really worthwhile to patent? Because it's not just about filing the patent and then you're done, you're protected, because now you have to prosecute when somebody breaks the patent, which is most of the time, especially for early stage startups, just not worth it, because you can't spend $100,000 or $200,000 to prosecute when somebody infringes on your patent. So I question, really, when should you do IP protection? Chris, you're in an industry that it really does matter, where the intellectual property is worth 7, 8, 9 figures. But for most startups, if you're really worried about it, do a low-cost provisional and move on.
Well, so let's stay with the NDA for a second. Stephanie, okay. How much is a unique startup idea worth?
Nothing. So my perspective on all of this, so to start with, is that ideas are free, right? And until you execute on them. And the difference between a successful idea, and if we're just talking about ideas, a successful idea and a just an idea, is execution. And you can also have 3 different people execute on the same idea and get 3 different results that may be appealing to 3 different markets, right? So that's my sort of baseline that I start from. But then then we get into there are industries, there are types of products, there are certain things where a patent and a trademark or the protection is actually really important, right? I'm innovating on to your point, Anthony, I'm innovating on a drug or a new medical device or something like that, where knowing that would be like a huge advantage to a competitor. So that's the big question I have, is like, when does it become worth it to file a patent? And I think this varies by industry. So the people who come up to me and they're like, oh, I have this idea for this new type of mastermind that I'm going to build. I'm going to go and patent it. And I'm like, just don't. Like, it would be so much effort. And I don't even know how enforceable it would be, like, to define something sort of ethereal like that, where it's going to cost you more time and money to trademark something or patent it than the threat that actually exists. I think there's a lot of that, but yeah, ideas are only as good as how well you execute on them.
So I think we've debunked the idea that you need NDAs off the bat. I think that there are some people that will still try to float NDAs in my industry. NDAs are actually common in med tech. It doesn't feel right or even smart to me to worry about doing NDAs, but particularly when we're working with manufacturing partners and people that do see a lot of things, I think you can do an NDA in that case, because it does offer. It's a thin layer of legal protection, but it is it's some legal protection. I want to hit on one thing you said, Anthony, and this is the trauma that you guys know the story about the contract to sell my company that didn't go so well after the exit. But one of the primary pieces here, and that every founder needs to understand, any contract, including a patent, is only as good as your ability to enforce it. And so we're poor. We don't have any money. We're paying stuff on credit cards. Don't pay for stuff on credit cards, but you're scraping by, and suddenly somebody infringes on your patent. Well, yeah, it's probably going to happen. So your only recourse is to try to go enforce the patent, which can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so this idea of this kind of blanket protection of intellectual property is a little bit of a myth. All right, I want to move into the next.
So I'm gonna add one little caveat to that, Chris. So I agree, and it's becoming less expensive because the ability to file a lawsuit now is become easier for pro se litigants by using AI. So AI, Claude actually just released an entire legal practice skill that makes it slightly easier, and I've started to use it too. Makes it easier to file a lawsuit. Anyway, we can move on. It's a whole deal, and you don't want to deal with it, but it is a good question to ask.
Have you guys seen It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia? I'm basically a lawyer. No, you're not. It's fine. I'm basically I'm basically an attorney.
I do think there's a little.
Go ahead, please, Stephanie.
I was just gonna say there's a little bit of signaling too. Like, if you go to the effort of taking out a patent, you're hoping that someone who's planning to compete with you sees that and decides it's not worth it, right?
Yeah.
Agreed. All right. So
Chris, I think our audience, I'm hoping that our audience isn't feeling the same way, but every time you look down, I want to connect the dots on your forehead, on your head.
I mean, thank you for calling out my dermatological issues, Anthony. Really supporting my self-esteem with my baldness this morning.
You said that to me, and I'm like, what dots?
Friends like these, Stephanie. Friends like these.
I know. Anthony.
Yeah. All right. So there's also this idea called trademarks and copyrights. I mean, you guys just want to touch on those really quickly. It's something where it's not necessarily germane to this conversation, but you will hear founders kind of talk a little bit about this idea of trademarks and copyrights. Anthony, you want to just touch on that briefly?
A trademark protects your name from somebody else copying it. And there's common law trademark and actual trademark. So a common law trademark is if you start using it and without getting a real trademark, you just put you'll see a little TM on a logo or on a word. That's common law trademark where somebody's just saying, I'm claiming this term. Is it enforceable? Maybe. But it does protect you from others trying to trademark it later. And then there's the registered, where you go through the USPTO and register your trademark, and there's some rules that you have to follow in order for the USPTO to agree to it. And the filing fee for each trademark is something around like $400 now, plus attorney's fees unless you do it pro se. Copyright is think of it as music or a book or an article that you write. And copyright has some restrictions around it too, but it protects you from somebody stealing your content and calling it their own.
And as far as I understand, there's like no legal process for copyright. We just put copyright.
You can register copyrighted material with the USPTO as well.
I would say the majority of people don't. I don't think
most people don't, but you can.
Yeah.
You can. I think Scaled Agile copyrighted with the USPTO their agile development methodology.
See, now we talked about SAFE last week, and now you're really excited about SAFE.
Right, it's SAFE again. All right, so last little bit of this world before we go in and actually talk about patents. So who needs to file a patent? What should be filed, etc. But there's this other idea called a trade secret. In business school, the famous example is Coca-Cola.
Yep.
Coca-Cola's recipe is not patented. It is not trademarked. There is no other intellectual property around it. It's just considered a secret within the company. Now, it's kind of fun because it's a trade secret. It's something that they keep under lock and key and all that sort of stuff. However, there is an element of protection there. If you claim something as a trade secret, if somebody steals it, they can't use it because they're like, it's a secret. So you guys ever dealt with trade secrets? I think it's not necessarily that complicated, but it is just one. It
is kind of complicated because you have to do things like, so yes, I dealt with trade secrets at MC Squares where we didn't patent everything. We had a trade, we trade secreted our manufacturing process, and it required us to have, whenever we brought somebody in to the factory, they had to sign an NDA. So there, in that circumstance, an NDA does make sense if you're trying to operate under the trade secret laws. Again, I'm not an attorney, so I don't have all the answers and what to do's and not to do's. But it isn't just something as simply calling it a trade secret, because if you don't treat it like a secret, then you can't call it a trade secret.
You're kind of an attorney.
You're not an attorney, but you have Claude.
Yeah, I mean, basically. No, don't. This is not legal advice. Don't sue us because we're not attorneys.
Everybody the ability to sue us if they want to with the pro se lawyers.
Yeah, exactly. Way to go, Anthony. Thank you. We're gonna get that other How to Founder podcast with the bad grammar.
The bad actors.
Yeah. Send us a cease and desist of like that. Okay, so let's talk about a patent. Fundamentally, a patent is about protecting an invention. And so this is really murky, Stephanie. The world that you and I grew up in software, inventions within software are kind of hard to find and to get, et cetera. And so for a while there was this entire drive towards trying to get patents, and then there became the patent troll movement. You want to talk through any portion of that? Because it was an interesting time in the world of technology.
Yeah, like in the sort of .com boom was a bust. There was a lot of conversation about patents and how you protect intellectual IP that is software, because software is built on a bunch of code that can ostensibly be called reusable, right? So where is the line between something new, like an invention, and something that is just a bunch of parts that already existed, right? That's sort of how I thought about it when I listened to them talk about what you could and what you couldn't protect. So I'm curious what your experience has been in the software world in terms of IP protection, because like there's one of my best friends, her husband is an IP lawyer for like Salesforce, and he makes a good money advising on technology IP protection. So there's obviously like a realm that exists, but it gets a little bit murky, right?
Yeah, Anthony, any experience in this world?
Yeah, so let's talk, I mean, we should talk about the different kinds of patents, right? So there's and I don't know, I don't remember all of them, but there's a design patent, which is actually typically the easiest one to do. It's like this thing is designed this way, it's in this shape, and it's this thick, and so you can have a design patent. You can't design patent a square, but you can design patent certain shapes, and then you have a utility patent, which I believe is typically how something works. You can have a process patent, was how do you produce it? And I do think there's a special patent for biologics, right, Chris? Like drugs, and I think there's a special call out for molecules, I think. So there are different types of patents. And then when it comes to software, I remember it was a long time running where people talked about the one-click to buy patent that Amazon had, which seems like a really lame patent to try to protect. And then there's also software, the code itself. Code can be copyrighted. Patented is a lot harder, especially given the fact that the patent law says you can't patent a mathematical algorithm. And then you have an additional layer to think about, whereas you can't patent something that AI helped you write. So IP protection gets really wonky really fast. So if AI helped you create it, you can't patent it, you can't copyright it, you probably can't trademark it either.
I want to touch on that, but you brought it up, so let's just continue. This is an entirely new world that we're trying to deal with now with AI. Stephanie, you built a software program, a couple weekends ago. You went away. Yeah. And so you built an entire software package. But fundamentally, that's based off of other people's code, because that's what AI does, right?
Yeah.
And so in this world of AI, you have to understand that everything is derivative from things that have already happened in the past. And so by definition, the novelty of those things is probably limited. Anthony, have you thought through this much?
No.
He's not the best co-host for nothing.
One of the other challenges with patenting software is that it's very, very often those patents are challenged, right? It's so much work and takes so long to try and prove that you actually have built a new algorithm or a new way of building. Like I think it's so slippery, and there is always so much contention around it. I think that's what has typically made it like something that a lot of people don't bother trying to do, right? And then
say
copyright.
decade,
Yeah, you can copyright your code.
Yeah. Right. One thing I realized that, Chris, that we just kind of glossed over, we probably should talk about as well, is the dipping dot story. Like, why couldn't he patent it after he already, like, Chris, why was it not feasible for him to patent dipping dots after he had already been in market with it? Why is that even a thing?
There is, and I am not an attorney, and I don't even own the legal part of Claude. So, I mean, Anthony, you're way ahead of me. So there's such thing called the public domain. And I'll give you an example that we've dealt with at my company lately, which is we deal with research institutions quite often. And we'll work with research institutions on novel intellectual property. the moment the professor that created that discovery, that invention, that came up with an invention, publishes that into an academic journal, it is now part of the public domain. It is no longer private information that constitutes an invention that we can then go and protect. And so if somebody goes out into the world and says, hey, this is our invention, and starts to make money off of it, it is now assumed that it's public domain. Now, in the US, it's a little bit different. You have a year within the US after something has been published to be able to still patent that. But internationally, if you do want to go for international patents, which is an entirely different episode, entirely different Donahue, as they say. But if you want to go, it is gone. That opportunity, once you put something in the public domain,
It's immediately gone in Europe. Yep.
And so it is a very challenging environment, particularly working within colleges and universities that are bridging this gap of doing public good by publishing research, but also trying to monetize that research through tech transfer. And there's a constant tension in that world. And for people like us that work in that environment, it's a very real issue, because in med tech, patents are very, very real and very protectable as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so kind of an interesting point. All right. So a patent is about an invention. You as an early stage founder, you come up with something new. It's novel. You go through your Claude, you ask it, what is the standard to be able to create a patent on this? My next step is then to call, the big Pulcinelli downtown and then pay them $30,000 to file a patent, Anthony? Is that reasonable?
Well, you're missing one thing, and let's talk about the process here in a second. But I also think we should talk about patents as a defensive strategy, not an offensive strategy. Steph, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, but I keep coming back to the question of like, when's the right time, right? It's particularly around patents. And is there a time where it is defensive, and is there a time where it is offensive, and does that change? And when do we make the decision how do we know when we have an invention? And that I'm not well versed enough on patent law to know, or
in Canada it's different too, right? It's totally different there than it is here. When do you know if you have a patentable idea?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's two things. Is it a good idea? Like, don't patent bad ideas. Don't patent, and then it's actually, you have to go through. It's a process. Like,
yeah,
I don't know what kind of advice I'd give a founder on this, because sometimes it's just not worth patenting. It's because it's not marketable. Go ahead.
I'm thinking less about whether the idea is patented. I can't even say it. Patentable. But more around, let's assume you have an idea that is worthy of a patent. What's the right time to protect it? Because to your point, how do we know it's a good idea yet? Like, have you done testing? When do you decide that you're going to put the time and effort in to go and patent it?
So this is a process question, and what a patent attorney will tell you is file a provisional first. What a provisional patent is it gives you it basically holds your right to patent it later. And I think a provisional is good for a year, and then you can file extensions on it. And and again, going back to AI, you probably can file a good enough provisional if you're on a budget. But provisionals are not super expensive with patent attorneys either, especially if you find they're not very difficult to do. And if you find a decent, independent patent attorney, it'll cost you. The last time I checked, it was like $1,500. So it's not super expensive. Because they're so loosely worded, and gives you the ability to file a legit patent later. So I would say file provisionals early if you really believe it might be patentable. That gives you that protection, kicks the can down the road a little bit, and allows you to go to market with the ability to, if it does become a thing, patent later.
That's the exact advice I would give Anthony. So the first thing I would do is I would go find a patent attorney in my town or just call somebody and say, hey, I've got this idea. Would you have a meeting with me? And it's just an initial call. They're not going to charge you for that call, but you say, hey, here's what I have. Is this even patentable? And generally they're going to say yes, because it's their business to then go file patents. However,
you don't ask your barber if you need a haircut.
That's exactly right. But then stop. Go file a provisional patent. You can do that yourself. It is not hard. It's relatively easy. You do have extensions. Put it on your calendar, but go file something, because all that does is creates a date. It creates a moment in time that you have now said, I intend to protect this intellectual property should it turn into something that's protectable. And so it's completely okay to just file a provisional patent. It's not saying your patent will get granted. It is not saying that you're even really figuring out what claims you're going to make within the patent. And that's all the things that the attorney or the patent agent will need to do. It does create that prior date, which is, if you're in a very competitive industry where there's lots of invention going on, that can be helpful. I would not, Anthony and Stephanie, I would not recommend for an early stage startup to go spend the amount of money it's going to take to go execute a patent on a business you have no idea whether it's going to be successful. The likelihood that your business fails because somebody steals your idea is a lot lower than all the other ways that you're going to go fuck it up.
That is true. Chris, you mentioned something really important, and that's the date. So the patent system used to be when the idea originated and was documented, that's who owns the IP, right? If I can prove that I came up with the idea first, I get to say I own the IP. It has since switched to first to file. So whoever files with the patent office first is the one that would be awarded the patent if it's patentable. So that date really does matter now. It used to not, but now it does.
We've kind of circled this. Go ahead, Stephanie. Sorry.
I was just going to say that like there's one other thing that comes up for me as a question, which is when you're filing early, and I'm not an expert on patent filings at all, but I wonder, how much you have to define sort of the boundaries and scope of what you're patenting, and then you continue to build out, and all of a sudden it becomes something that's not something else, or grows into something else that's not necessarily covered by patent. I don't know how far that goes. And so I think that's one of the risks of filing too early as well.
No, it's not actually, because there's this thing called a continuation part that lets you extend the patent. Yeah. Okay. So you can
that's good information, right?
You can continue to add essentially connected patents to the patent that you initially filed. So there are tricks. There's not tricks. There's documented and well-established processes for doing things just like that.
Okay, that's good information for everybody to know.
Yeah.
So let's kind of wrap this part of the conversation, and we'll get to the speed round. But we've talked about this stuff, and we said, hey, you don't really have to worry about it. And then we got very detailed and how complicated it can be and all those sorts of things. What advice would you give somebody that's created a widget, something physical, a new type of mechanical pencil, that they've invented it, and they said, hey, I've got this thing. I don't have a ton of money, and we're just starting to build, we're starting to explore. How should they think about this entire world of intellectual property and protecting their invention?
Go hug your current boss, thank him for the job, and drop the idea. This also gets into the idea of who owns the intellectual property. Don't go build your startup on your current company's. Oh yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that. Yeah.
Go ahead, Steph. I'll let you answer this one.
Why? I don't know that I have a better answer.
So sorry, Chris. So first time founders, if you're looking to explore it, file that provisional. It's not going to hurt. And a provisional patent, if you do it yourself, is going to be really inexpensive. You're going to get it wrong. Use AI to help you write the patent, but I wonder, there's a recursive loop there. If you use AI to help you write the patent,
Is
is the
it
patent even
patentable?
protectable? Like, is the IP now protectable? I don't know.
I keep coming back to the same question. Like, I've dealt with a lot of first-time founders that are like, my idea is so important and I need to go and patent it. I still think the sort of the advice people need is like, when do you patent and when do you not? And I know that we talked about the concept of an invention, but I don't think we really sort of defined what you should bother with and what you shouldn't, right? And people get really wrapped up in their ideas and like terrified about competition, right?
This is such a great question. It's such a great question, Steph.
Because it's the thing that everybody, it's the thing, like I had somebody, one of my business owners come to me the other day and she's like, oh, I just found somebody in like Portland who has a business that's almost the same name as me. And I'm like, it's a tiny little mom and pop shop in Portland. And she's like,
Why
should I
bother?
sue? And I'm like, no.
No,
No.
trademarks do have regions around them too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, so what, right? Like you have to ask yourself the question, so what?
Yeah,
Right?
but it's like the reason why this is so difficult is because, so I'll give you a real example. My brother, hopefully he's not watching, he's like, dude, I've got this great idea. I got this great invention idea. I need you to help me bring it to market and patent it. I'm like, okay, what is it? And he's like, well, I go to concerts and do things all the time where I'm in a big crowd. Like for example, going to New York, Times Square during New Year's Eve. And I've invented a thing that lets you just like it, you attach it to it lets you go pee without needing to go to the bathroom. It's a bag that you go pee in basically in a tube in its whole system. And he's like, dead serious that he wants to bring this thing to market. Now, is that a good idea or a bad idea? I would never buy it, but it might be a good idea. And should he patent that? How do you tell somebody not like what you're asking, Steph, is should I patent this idea? And you're asking if one, is it in good taste? And two, will it become a thing? And how could you answer that? How do you're asking for somebody to have judgment that they may or may not have. And if they're asking me, I certainly don't have. Who knows? That could be a $100 million idea. I doubt it, but
I think it's the greatest idea I've ever heard. I'm investing in your brother's idea this very moment, and he is a far more accomplished entrepreneur than you.
Totally. But I guess what I'm saying, Steph, is your question is unanswerable.
I will tell you that there is a standard of test, and you can go through it relatively quickly. And you can Google this. It's got to be within the subject matter that patents protects or process, design, etc. It has to have utility. Does it actually provide some sort of utility? It's got to be novel. It's got to be non-obvious, and that you have to be able to describe how it works. It's called enablement. And so it's a fairly easy test to go through that. Also, I'll tell you that AI in the world that I'm living in now is incredibly powerful just to map the current landscapes and the claims that are out there. And so as you get into the patent world, and again, I don't think you really want to file your own patent. You certainly can, but you have to start to make claims. And claims then are what this thing does within these categories. It can get complicated. I think that at the same point, I wouldn't get overly wrapped up in patents as an early stage founder. I would probably file a provisional if I have some cool widget. But at the end of the day, there is a lot of other stuff that you need to do to make your business successful. And the likelihood of somebody coming in and stealing your idea and then suddenly going and making $1 billion company is a little bit of a myth. And if they do, you're probably not going to be able to sue them anyway because they've got a whole ton of money and you don't. And so really, I think that the advice that I've always heard, and I'll get your reflection on this before we go to the speed round, is just go build a great company. And then once you have a great company, then you can worry about IP. And if you do have some prior dates, you do have a couple of patent pendings, that's when you can go clean it up once you're really successful. Is that a fair piece of advice? Or
I think that's a great piece of advice.
I agree.
Okay. Well, let's get to the speed round, which, might be interesting. Consider that, we'll see. I mean, we've just mentioned this. Do you file a provisional patent before your first investor meeting, Anthony?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Patents or trade secrets harder for a funded company to crack? Which one?
Trade secret.
Yeah, I would agree.
You don't need a patent if your execution is fast enough. True or false?
100% agree with that. I think you need a patent for defense, not offense, in that scenario.
Yeah, there's some signaling in there too, right?
1 year of selling before you file your patent? Is your patent already dead?
I don't know, but
Yeah.
I would definitely, I don't know the legalities of it, but I would definitely say yes, get a year of selling. Is that the question? I don't know. The question.
I think the likelihood is yes, but consult an attorney.
Yeah, at that point, I'd say no, but it's probably.
Ask Claude, ask us. We'll
there
get
you
the
go.
answer.
Exactly. Ask Anthony. He's an attorney. He just has promised that he's an attorney and is now handle all of your legal questions. Congratulations on passing the bar, Anthony.
I do have a waiver.
Deep dive resources. Deep dive resources. The Invisible Edge, taking your strategy to the next level, leveling up using intellectual property by Mark Blaxill and Ralph Eckhart, and Patent It Yourself by David Pressman. There are guides out there to go write your own patent. Hey, it was fun. We learned a little bit today. Anthony, you want to get us out of here?
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Chris and Steph. This was a great conversation. Thank you for listening. Please be sure to visit us at howtofounder.com, where you can connect with us on LinkedIn and subscribe to our YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify channels. You're listening to one of those now. Hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. Leave us a review, especially if you care about Chris's feelings. You are the pioneer of economic prosperity. We are just grateful to be there along the way with you guys. Thanks, guys. Bye.
It's almost as if you have no business training at all.